Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path.
Today I'm going to be reading from Psalm 65, and I'll be reading from the English Standard Version. Praise is due to you, O God in Zion, and to you shall vows be performed. O you who hear prayer, to you shall all flesh come. When iniquities prevail against me, you atone for our transgressions. Blessed is the one you choose and bring near to dwell in your courts. We shall be satisfied with the goodness of your house, the holiness of your temple. By awesome deeds you answer us with righteousness, O God, our salvation, the hope of all the ends of the earth and all of the farthest seas. The one who by his strength established the mountains, being girded with might, who stills the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves, the tumult of the peoples, so that those who dwell at the ends of the earth are in awe at your signs. You make the going out of the morning and the evening to shout for joy. To visit the earth and to water it. You visit the earth and water it. You greatly enrich it. The river of God is full of water. You provide their grain, for you have prepared it. You water its furrows abundantly, settling its ridges, softening it with showers, and blessing its growth. You crown the year of your bounty. Your wagon tracks overflow with abundance. The pastures of the wilderness overflow. The hills gird themselves with joy. The meadows clothe themselves with flocks. The valleys deck themselves with grain. They shout and sing together for joy. This psalm of David overflows with praises of God's majesty, his power, and his perfect creation. In verse 1, David acknowledges that God is due praise and worthy of his vows that are being performed to him. This immediate statement, as soon as we start this psalm, shows how highly David regarded God. One question that I thought to myself is, do I always think about God in this same way? As we continue on to verses 2 through 4, David tells us God is the only person who hears our prayers, who can atone for our transgressions and wrongs. God will decide who comes into his court, into his presence. The true and living God is the only one who can do these things. In verses 5 through 8, they describe God's power over the forces of the earth, forces that you and I look on in pure awe. The strength of the ocean currents, the storms that roll through, that we watch through the seasons, the mountains that we look upon and wonder. People all over the world look upon God's perfect creation and wonder. Verse 8 ends with a statement. You make the going out of the morning and the evening to shout for joy. Do we find joy and peace in the wonder of God's creation and God's power? In our last section of this chapter, verses 9 through 13, it talks about the land itself. We can see God visits the earth to enrich it, to soften it, and to make it grow in verses 9 and 10. Everywhere God goes, he leaves abundance in his wake in verse 11. Even the land that is happy when God visits. This is a stark contrast to much of the Old Testament that where those writers tell us of judgment and destruction when God comes and visits the earth. Our God cares about his creation, and he's going to tend to it. One thing to think about today, do I slow down long enough to see God's majesty in his creation? One thing to pray for, God to continue to visit the earth for our good. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that this study of Psalm 65 has been beneficial for you.